Okay.
Can you stay in stay there?
So
You want
I'm
to mute
so
everybody?
excited to introduce Anja Maijala. Anya's a One Health Master's candidate in the College of Indigenous Studies at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and she's going to present on her experience working with Skiku in the GASH subregion of Alaska. And Anya will tell you a little bit more about herself. So I'll let Anya go ahead and get started.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Guess my slides won't let me go back, so we're just going to start right off with introducing myself. My name's Anja Maijala. I'm originally from northern Minnesota, but now am living in Fairbanks. I came up to UAF to pursue an undergrad degree in wildlife biology and outdoor leadership and be on the UAF ski team. And now I'm pursuing my master's in One Health, which was kind of inspired from me growing up in a Western background and ultimately ended up working with tribes in Alaska and feeling like I just needed to learn more to do better work um, in that role. But now I'm spending more time just focusing on school and ski coach for the ski club, North Ski Club of Fairbanks on the side, as well as I volunteered ski coached for Skiku for quite a few years now. And just so all of you kind of know what One Health is, what I'm focusing my master's on, and kind of what this whole internship is about. One Health is this perspective that human, animal, and environmental health are all interconnected. Um, and in the field of skiing, how that kind of ties in is that I really feel like skiing can kind of be important parts of physical and our mental health and community well-being. And it's a really great opportunity to connect with our animals, like our dogs, and also the surrounding lands that we live and play on. And so that's kind of how skiing all fits into One Health and yeah, my One Health internship. Okay, it's not letting me. There we go. So before we get into the action, I want to just like break down what to expect out of this presentation. So I'm going to give you a little project background, and then I'm going to talk about the Skiku programming and the work that I was set out to do with Skiku, and then talk about just my process of learning through experience, and then move on to my key takeaways and the outputs that I produced. And then I'm going to work really hard to leave time for some stories. If anybody wants to share ski coup stories or ski experiences, whether that's with ski coup in Gash or outside experiences, and then some time for questions at the very end. So save your questions for the end, or feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get to them later. Okay, but first, I wanted to get us all in the skiing spirit by starting off with a song. So I had a friend and volunteer join me for two of my ski coup weeks, and she remembered the song that she learned about cross country skiing when she was learning to ski. So we sang this with the older kids in Grayling, and this is a song about cross country skiing.
And then it's light, and it's kick, kick, and then it's light. It's all in the rhythm, and it's all in the rhythm. It's all in the rhythm, and then it's light. Keep free, rhythm is light. Keep free, rhythm is light. Keep free,
hopefully that has you in the skiing spirit now, thinking about kicking and gliding on the snow. So to give you a little background about some things, it's pretty important to know what is Skiku. So Skiku is a nonprofit. Their headquarters are based in Anchorage, but they have the mission to bring cross-country skiing to rural Alaska, all over the state of Alaska. And they bring coaches, mostly volunteers, out to communities to work in the schools primarily with youth to develop ski programming there. And maybe you've never heard of the word Skiku, and that's because it was a word came up with to combine the Inupiaq word ice, which is siku, with ski, and that's what how Skiku came to be. So that's a little bit of background on what Skiku is, but you'll learn more as we go. And then what is GASH? Also important to clarify. So GASH is a region, lower Yukon, Anoka rivers area. And GASH is consisted of Grayling, Anvik, Shageluk, and Holy Cross, which are all primarily Alaska Native villages. And they are all pretty small in population. Anvik is closer to population size of 50, and Grayling is closer to population size and 200 people. So all fairly small, and the schools were all around like anywhere from 10 to 30-ish kids. So small scale for sure. And yeah, Grayling is, GASH is highlighted with the green here. For some context on location. So the GASH Skiku background of how this project kind of came to be is that Shageluk and Skiku have had a partnership for a while. And Santa here, the woman in this photo on the right, she kind of has been involved with Skiku and thinking that it would be great to have Skiku in GASH, other GASH communities. Especially since the region actually has like a pretty rich history of skiing. Most middle-aged adults or older have skied when they were younger in school. And there was a lot of energy around it. And she kind of wanted to start bringing that back, especially since the school district, Iditarod Area School District, has very limited sporting opportunities. Unlike other schools in the state, they don't have the typical like sports teams, like basketball or volleyball or cross country running. They don't have any sports through the school district. And that's an important thing to get kids moving and to have opportunities for kids. So the tribes in GASH, Grayling, Anvik, Shageluk, Holy Cross, came together and said, we want to have an opportunity for our kids to move their bodies, and reached out to Skiku and decided that they wanted to have a region-wide Skiku programming happen this year. And they also identified a coach in the region, Justin, who's the young man on the right here, who was interested in being a ski coach. He really wanted skiing to come to his community that he lives in, Holy Cross. And so Skiku created a position for that I ended up filling to go out to these communities and do Skiku, normal Skiku weeks in each of them, all four, 1 week each, and then at the same time train Justin how to be a ski coach so that there could be local capacity for continued ski programming. And I was super stoked that this, I kind of got invited onto this project that was already set up by the GASH tribes and Skiku, just like set up for success in my mind to be sustainable, where the tribes wanted it. They identified a local person to be a leader and then asked for help through Skiku to bring a coach on to do the training and kind of facilitating of some things. And I just wanted to point out this photo I thought was cool. When you walk into the Holy Cross school, there's this muskox head with skis over. And It just like speaks to how there used to be a lot of skiing if you walk into the school and that's the first thing you see. Okay, moving on. So this is a little news article that covers this project really great. And I figured rather than try and explain it, I'll play it for you.
Justin River Lecton was a 5th grade student in Aniak in southwest Alaska when he learned to ski. He loved it and started going out on the river with his dogs, breaking trail, and enjoying the freedom the activity brought him.
It brought me outdoors. It took me, outside to the nature, and I was just enjoying it so much.
Now, Lecton is 21 and becoming a ski coach. In February, he joined the nonprofit Skiku, which taught him how to ski and has been bringing the sport to kids across Alaska. Together, he and the Skiku team traveled to several interior villages on the banks of the Yukon River, Grayling, Anvik, and Shageluk. Lecton shadowed other Skiku coaches, learned teaching techniques and ways to maintain skis. The February trip culminated with a week in another community in the same region, Holy Cross, where Lecton now lives. There, he ran the show. Next winter, he will be the coach for Holy Cross kids.
They're mostly inside. It'd be great to get them outside and to do something outdoors all together as a team,
Skiku has been around for more than a decade, bringing cross-country ski coaches and equipment to kids in Alaska villages who don't regularly have access to the sport. Program staff spend about a week at a time in each community and have traversed most of Alaska. Tyler Hennigan is its executive director. He says usually after the visit, the skis go back to the closet for the rest of the winter. Hennigan says what's missing is an adult who will take the kids out.
To kind of keep those communities shredding. In my mind, I have like a Jedi Padawan situation where like we can kind of have that person mentor those folks out there and really kind of hope to make something a little more sustainable too that's really more community driven.
That's where Lecton comes in, to keep it going throughout the season. He is the first local coach Skiku has trained up. Sydney Roach is a student in middle school in Shageluk. She worked with Lecton and other coaches when they stopped in her village.
We were going skiing around town and up and down hills and through creeks and stuff. And it's pretty fun. I like it. We skied every day of the week, I think.
Sydney says she's happy for the opportunity to ski, which she doesn't get to do a lot. Her mother, Sonta Hamilton Roach, also appreciated it.
Get the kids excited about being out and about, going down hills. I can never see myself going down.
Sonta Roach says that children in her region stay active by hauling wood and working outside. But she says they don't get many chances to try themselves in competitive sports, something that she says is good for discipline, development, and potentially educational opportunities. And Roach is happy all 4 villages in her area are part of this project.
We're all the same people trying to live good, healthy, quality lives in our communities. And the best way to do that is working together. When you really see our tribes come together, we could do cool things.
Aside from the 4 communities along the lower Yukon River, Skiku visited more than 20 villages across the state this year. The organizers say they hope to continue growing the number of communities they serve and to find more residents like Lecton in each of them to keep kids skiing throughout the season. In Anchorage, I am Alona Knighton.
Okay, so that was a great piece that was recorded about the Skiku project. And to give you a little bit more context of the goals of this project, when I came in, I was given this kind of list of things that I was to work on. And first off was to deliver high quality ski instruction in GASH. And that's always the case, to deliver high quality ski instruction in any community that Skiku goes to. But then what was unique to this project was that I was instructed to give mentorship and hands-on training to Justin, the local coach that was identified, so that he could hopefully build up some ski programming in the region. And then also support the creation of community ski clubs and help locals understand skiing skills how to use equipment. And then all while doing that, working to build strong relationships with the tribes, the school staff, parents, and communities in general. And then really, Skiku's one of their main goals is just to build or create visibility for skiing, that it's a fun and healthy sporting activity to get kids outside and moving. And one of the things in this context, being in rural Alaska, Alaska Native villages, is making this programming be culturally relevant and sensitive. And then a personal goal that I kind of added to this is I wanted to do all of this through learning from experience. So it was a unique opportunity to get to be in a region for 4 weeks, a whole month, a place that I had never been before. I don't know the people there. I don't know anything about the place really. And so I didn't really want to come in with all of my knowledge and experience and just be like, this is what we're going to do. Instead, I wanted to use all of my 4 weeks interacting with people to gain knowledge of the people there and the place to then produce outputs for the ski programming that could be continued if chosen by Justin and other people. So that was a personal goal. So to give you some context about what a weekly Skiku program would look like, and this could be any Skiku program, could be something in Kaktovik or something down near South Central. Most Skiku programs are kind of run with this structure. And so in my case, we were doing afternoons with the kids, given that these schools were pretty small. And each school we were in for about a week. We did 5 days of ski programming. And this is Skiku's curriculum already kind of put in place, just kind of shift and shape things to fit the kids and the weather and the school. But typically day one, you're just like teaching them how to use skis and boots, how to fall and get up using dead bug, basic body position things, because many of these kids actually have never skied before because Skiku hadn't been to these communities. So you're starting from scratch. And then you kind of move on to teaching the kids just basic technique things, how to shuffle on your skis. Primarily, we were using classic skis. Maybe do some drills where you take one ski off, see who can balance the longest, glide the longest, those kind of things. And then day 3, we kind of introduced like uphills and downhills using the duck walk to waddle up the hill and the snowplow or the pizza to slow down or go down the hill. And then maybe you have them do a little slalom course to zigzag, practice using some edges, and then games, so many games, because games drill in these skills, whether they know it or not. And then day 4, kind of once they have their feet underneath them on their skis, you can be ready to do some actual ski around town. And just so many of you understand, most of these communities, a lot of them don't have a ton of vehicles. So snow machines or 4-wheelers are the primary traffic in the winter. And really what that allows for is most of the roads are like ski trails. So you can kind of just ski anywhere, which is pretty sweet. So skiing a loop through the village. And then there's a lot of fun games that you can play, but like playing soccer or basketball on skis are games that kids are familiar with. And then the final day is you can ski like a bigger loop, or what's really fun is to get the kids into doing like a relay race or a big obstacle course or even a ski race. So kind of like building up to this event. So that's what a typical Skiku week might look like anywhere. And this is primarily ran by volunteers. And so to give you a taste of what it actually is like, I put together a bunch of clips from my time out in Grayling, Anvik, Shageluk, and Holy Cross. And so these are some little video clips of what it looks like to do a Skiku week.
Yee! Nice one. Go, Jackson. Oh. Go, Chance.
Good job.
Can we have a break?
Why don't you get to the top of the hill?
You're almost there. Oh, take it back up.
Yeah, I got this.
Good job, Patrick. Come on, David. Wait, hustle, David, hustle. Go, David.
I know. So here comes Delinda, Gabriella, and their teacher bringing up the rear. Woo!
I made it.
Good job. High five. Good job.
Can I repeat that?
Yeah, you can repeat it. Now you got to try doing it faster next time. Good job, everybody. Help them up.
I'm gonna win.
Nice.
No! Yes! Mario, there you go!
Are you ready for that?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, watch out for Liam. Bend your knees. Nice.
Way to go! Let's go, Andrew. Way to go, Trinity. Woohoo! Okay, Glenna. Go, girl, go. Woohoo! Okay. My computer is very slow.
Yee.
Okay. Let's see if it lets me exit full screen. All right, there we go. So that's what a Skiku week kind of looks like. A lot of playing in the snow, having fun. But to move on, that was just Skiku programming with the kids was just like half of what I was doing when I was out here. The other half was working with Coach Justin to train him to be a ski coach. Also, pretty much from scratch. Other than skiing a couple years for 1 week each with Skiku when he was a kind of like maybe like fifth through eighth grader, sometime in that time range. He hadn't skied since, but he really remembered his time with Skiku and wanted it to come to Holy Cross and wanted to be able to ski in Holy Cross. So yeah, I spent 4 weeks working in the mornings with him, kind of following this structure that Skiku gave me as an outline, where each week we kind of had a goal, and he also shadowed me and other volunteer coaches throughout the typical Skiku programming too, which you can learn so much from that as well. But our structure that we followed here was week 1, we would meet for a couple hours each day, and we just went over ski lessons. It's like if he was taking adult ski lessons. And so we talked about basic skiing skills and fundamentals. And then week 2, we moved on to how can you use those skills to then instruct. So kind of learning for him to be able to know this skill is associated with maybe this game or this drill, so that he could teach kids those skiing skills. And then week 3, we moved on to how to kind of build him up as a ski leader, building a ski program. So running week 3, he started to run some sessions of our Skiku programming. So maybe he taught the kids how to duck walk up the hill, or snowplow, pizza, all those things. And then week 4 was him running the show. So we talked about how to kind of be a ski club leader, running a whole ski club, and teaching lessons and kind of having a training plan. So that's kind of the flow of how my coach training went. But really, it was informed continuously. I was trying to meet these kind of bullet points, but like the fine details were informed by getting to learn from Justin. So we spent a lot of time together, 4 weeks, and I had never met Justin before. But first off, I just got to say, the world needs more Justins. He is such a great young man. And I really enjoyed his ability to reflect on the things that I was teaching him, to connect them to his own life and own experiences. And that just really shows that that's how you're going to remember things. So that was really awesome to see. And then he really talked about how he loves the physicality of sports like skiing and running and biking, and how they can be so applicable to life out in the village. There's a lot of laborious things like hauling wood and subsistence harvest, and there's so many good reasons to move your body so you can be able to do those other things. And then he talked a lot about similarities between basketball coaching, which he has volunteered basketball coached in the region before, and how there's how the kids respond, and keeping things fun. So I took away a lot of things from that connection. And then just seeing him be such a great role model for the kids, having like young males are pulled in so many directions, especially in rural Alaska, and having kids seeing him out skiing. And these are just 2 of many photos where the boys just like clung to him because he's showing them that, oh, I could be a ski coach maybe someday, or I should go skiing. Justin does it. So Justin taught me so much that helped inform a lot of my outputs that we'll discuss later. And then learning from the community. I worked really hard to come in with an open mindset and try to take away a lot of context about why skiing was wanted in these communities, and how can I make it relevant to them. And so I did a lot of just skiing around town and running into people walking or snow machining and just talking to people. And I learned that there's quite a bit of a rich history of skiing. Like most people, middle-aged adults I talked to had skied before. And they were like, wow, this is great. It's the next generation's turn to carry on the skiing legacy. And just a very deep appreciation for the programming, which felt really good to like be in a place where it's like they really do want this and they care about it. And then all the school staff were so sweet and nice. Many of the communities we were staying in the school, so it was really easy to have conversations with them. And they talked about what they see as the kids just in learning environments in general, whether that be skiing or typical academic education, but how there are some kids that don't get challenged in the academic rigor that they have there. And so like this was the first time that they might have been really challenged trying new things. There aren't sometimes a lot of opportunities to try new things in these small communities. So this was awesome for them to like really get to try something new. And then just like those standards of perfection that might be seen in everyday life out in these places, like they hold that to skiing as well. And you can see they really care about learning it the right way, which is good to know. And then I did interviews with the tribal staff, if possible, where I asked them just questions about how to make skiing more relevant and reasons they wanted this. And really the big takeaway was that they are prioritizing their youth. Youth are the future in these communities, which many of these communities are, they have more elders than youth or have similar ratios. So they're kind of like aging communities. And getting kids to stick around and have fun things to do in these communities is really important. And then kind of like a cultural relevance thing is that like endurance is really in their blood in these people, and kind of channeling that endurance that they have in other aspects of their life through sports like skiing can be a cool way to connect skiing into the communities. And then I had the honor to speak with some elders as well. And some of the key takeaways I had through sitting down with them is that like having a strong purpose is really important, which seems kind of self-explanatory, but like really digging into like, what is the purpose of having skiing here? And using that to kind of gauge your direction you take it. And then learning, just like having so many learning opportunities is so critical for anybody really, kids, adults, but yeah, the elders were just like always keeping busy and keeping their minds going with being involved with things. And so those were some things I took away. And lastly, learning from the kids. There's so much to learn from just watching the kids and how they respond to your instruction. And these kids I really learned that they're like very visual, hands-on learners. I actually watched these little interviews with elders that were just like little DVDs that were in one of the tribal halls. And one of the things they really talked about is like kids learning from just seeing. You don't have to talk as much. So that was something that I picked up on. Like these kids are really visual. And I tried hard and in the future want to work on being more of a shower than a teller. And it was amazing to watch the kids pick up on me just skiing a certain way, not even explaining it, and them just watching it. And then learning how the kids learn through letting them lead review. Each day, I would start the day's programming with time for review on what we learned the day before. And it was incredible to have the kids lead that. And the way they explain it would be very different than I would, but that's what makes sense to them and all the kids their age. And so it was cool to be like, oh, this is what they got out of this lesson. And then really learning to meet them where they're at. I don't have a ton of time spent with kids in my day-to-day life. And so just remembering like, oh, getting down to their level, their where their minds are at. So just as a kind of silly but little important reminder. And then just being inspired by the kids' resilience and determination. There's so much falling, and they just keep getting up and keep trekking up the hill and down the hill and doing it over and over again. Definitely that like working hard, playing hard. And then lastly, the team mindset. It was pretty sweet to see one kid be like, I'm going to try the big hill. And then them all like, oh, that person did it. I can do it too. So remembering that that is such an amazing part of sport is that team mindset. So then some of the main takeaways kind of from this learning through experience perspective that I was taking on my time in GASH was really like, okay, what is skiing to GASH? And so these takeaways were that there's so much local interest and potential for local coaching capacity. And they, through talking to a lot of like parents and teachers and tribal staff, really them being interested in facilitating skiing and that there was a gap for having easy access to resources and knowledge to be able to take kids out skiing. And so like Skiku is amazing. They take the kids out. But a lot of the adults in the communities might not know how to facilitate skiing. And ultimately they'd be the ones after Skiku leaves to do that. And so a need for more accessible information. And then through some of my interviews, that purpose and drive. So having a very defined purpose of what skiing is to means to these communities and what's driving it, and then kind of channeling that like cultural endurance and all the great opportunities that come with sports in terms of learning experiences, teamwork, work ethic, and new challenges. Those are kind of some of parts of the purpose. And then finally, that skiing is really a great opportunity to learn from your surroundings and community, that being like the land around you, the animals around you, the people around you, learning from your aunts and uncles who used to ski or your parents, and really kind of making of skiing what you want. So that was like a big mindset that I had in this was I want them to feel like they can make skiing what they want and take it in the directions they want to, whether that be using skiing to check their traps or having skiing be a competitive sport. So those are kind of some of my main takeaways. And then I used that learning from experience to produce some outputs for the communities based on those interviews with the tribes and working with Justin and the things that Skiku wanted me to do. So one of the outputs was this curriculum, which is created to be a guide for Justin. This is very place-based and my personal experience in these communities based. And so whatever we were doing in that structured kind of outline that Skiku gave me, I kind of filled in the specifics of what we ended up doing and kind of adding some specific context based on the place or the people we were working with. And so this is just one page, but kind of outlining shows like the bullet points of all the things we kind of did. And this is hopefully something that Justin continues to use and could share with other people who are in his place of wanting to become a local or regional ski coach. And one thing was that like Justin and I sat down and wrote pieces of this together. So it was like collaborative. But I'm not going to get into too much of the details of that. Another thing was kind of filling that gap of having the tools, adults having the tools to have continued ski programming. And so one thing I made for GASH was a folder that has a lot of outlines of how to do things. And this is not like, this is how you do it. It's like, this is suggestions. I'm giving you the toolkit to then do what you want with that. And information on how to run a ski meet, information on a basic club structure, like communication structures. We made a GASH skiing Facebook page because Facebook is the main way that they communicate in these communities. And then kind of like a way to organize ski inventory and rent out skis so that it's all set up and easy for them to use if they so choose to use it. But I didn't want to recreate the wheel because Skiku already has like great curriculum on their website here, and they have a ski tube, which is YouTube with skiing instruction. So Skiku already has great resources. It's just like for this specific community, putting things in a kind of one easy place, and then encouraging use of those Skiku resources as well. And then lastly, one of the outputs was making this poster. And I had so much fun with this because it was a really good challenge to like, I have all this ski knowledge, and then it's like, how do I put just a few points on a poster for somebody who knows nothing about skiing to see this and be like, oh, I'm going to take my son out to ski. This is the gear I need. This is how you use it. If I say the word dead bug or pizza to my child who's had basic ski instruction, they might know what those things mean. Or I could play red light, green light, or we could go walk on the river and he could ski. Like, what should I do for maintenance? And then kind of like, how does this cultural values, like, how does this tie into where I am here in this village and my values, my community values? So I had super fun, a ton of fun making this poster. And I hope that the communities really like it because it was their suggestion. They were like, do you have a like an easy accessible resource that like I could have in my classroom, or we could have in the tribal hall, or parents could have, so that they could take their kids out skiing? And so they gave me the idea, and I made this poster with that. And I hope that it helps fill that gap of Skiku coming for 1 week and then skis never getting used. Hopefully more people can get their kids out with this poster information. And then we also did a ski meet. That was another output. So like I said, that most middle-aged people used to, in these communities, had skied before when they were kids. And they actually had ski meets. And if you walk into most of the schools, you'll see trophies in the hallways of these ski meets. And Santa, who was like a major facilitator of this, based in Shageluk, she was like, I want to have a ski meet for the kids when they're all gathered in Grayling, which was our week 2 for this Youth Days event. And so we had a ski meet, which was super fun. We had kids from each school represented. Some of them had never skied before, just learned that week, and then put skis on. And this was just for the older kids. Here's a little map on the right. You can see it just zigzags through town. The roads are trails. And then we had lots of spectators. Anybody who didn't want to race came out and just spectated, which was awesome to have so many people cheering. And then this was a great photo, the upper left, of our champion Carver, who also was one of prom royalty. And the little kids really looked up to him. So we had to get a photo with him. So Gash Ski Meet, first in 30 some years is what I was told. So hopefully this can become an annual thing where the Gash tribes can come together to host the meet for the school kids. And then just kind of to tie things together, I wanted to take a little bit of time to reflect on some things. And largely, I wanted to emphasize how I came into this with like the purpose that Skiku had, like their mission, but I really came into it with an open mind of knowing that I had never been here before to any of these places. And I have experience doing ski things, but it might not at all fit or be applicable to these places. So really using that, like learning from these places, the people and the culture that I'm immersed in to create programming that they want, that fits for them. And then for me, it was so fun being in this role because it was such a great meeting place of my skiing knowledge as like a racer, as a coach, and then my new knowledge that I've been learning through my One Health Masters about how to do respectful outreach in communities. And man, I would love to do this for like a full-time job. It'd be sweet. So it was a really cool experience for me to get to be like, this is a good fit for me. And then outreach just in general is always incredibly rewarding, but this photo in particular was pretty awesome because it was my last day. I was in Holy Cross. We were about to fly out, and I wake up and it's -30, and these two girls were out skiing, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like it's all worth it. And so it was pretty sweet to we let the kids keep the skis there, the older kids, and they were out skiing each night and day and all the time. It's just like so sweet to see them out and about. And on that note, I'm just super looking forward to seeing what the future holds for GASH skiing. And I really hope that they continue to reach out to me as a resource. I'm happy to provide mentorship still. And yeah, I think the future is bright. And then let's see. I'm gonna skip on my favorite memories because I want to leave time for questions, but at the end we can come back to them. But these are just some photos of some of my favorite memories. Yeah. But acknowledgements, there's so many people to thank. This was like a multifaceted project with lots of moving parts. Starting off like with the volunteers and coaches. So just thanking Justin, the coach who I got to work with for all 4 weeks. And then I had 3 volunteers who flew in just for 1 to 2 weeks at a time to join and bring food, resupplies. So Kathy Walling and Jan Thompson and Tom Moran. And then also thanking my coaches in the past, UAF and high school coaches who like gave me the skills needed to even do this in the first place. And then I want to thank the GASH Tribes. You guys are all amazing in the work you're doing for your youth and communities, and all the schools. Just they were providing housing, transportation, food, hospitality, did most of the planning. I kind of just came in and was able to just do the work on the ground without doing much of the logistics. And Skiku, this was pretty sweet. I lost my job in the fall and I reached out to them and was like, hey, I have more time to do more Skiku programming. If you're interested, or if there's a train the trainer program, and they reached out and were like, hey, we have this opportunity. So it was really sweet for me to have an extended Skiku experience, and they did most of the coordination and provided a lot of mentorship, and I'm really thankful for all their help. And then UAF, the One Health program, my advisors, Jessica Black and Lori Trotta, and then my professor here, Lena Thompson, for reaching out to me and being like, I can help you do an internship credit with Skiku. So it was pretty awesome to be able to have this be involved with my master's work. And then one final pitch, just if you don't know about Skiku, you could become a volunteer as well, as long as you are interested in skiing, have some ski experience, like to work with kids, find flying in little planes, and are fun to be around. But yeah, usually in the fall, Skiku will open their volunteer application, and you can kind of pick a location or a time frame, and they'll assign you to a community, and it's really fun and really rewarding work. And you can volunteer in a remote place, maybe you've never been, and meet some new people and make some kids really, really happy. So that's all I have for presentation today. I just want to say